Okay, welcome everyone. Good to see all of you. We are on Dalid Amud Aleph, which is 4a. Anyone who has our scroll can tell us, but essentially, remember we have a series of teachings from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and we left off last time. It was really just a one-liner in which we learned that Nashim Chayavos b'Mikra Megillah Shafin Hayibos Hanes. We learned that women are obligated in the mitzvah of Megillah because they too were involved in the miracle. So the question is to what degree they were involved in the miracle. So before we jump into the Gemara, while some people are still getting logged on, there are two important tosusim here. I'll share one of them with you, and then I'll save the other one for when we do the actual shir on the topic, God willing, for the Monday night very soon. Let me figure out what the noise is coming from. Mute it. Oh, there we are. Found it. Okay. So one Tosos, before we jump into the Gemara, I want you to take a look at Tosos, Dibur Maschul, Sha'afhin Hayu Ba'oso Hanes. So Tosos, again, I apologize. There's no translation in the typical Art Scroll. In fact, I think Art Scroll actually just started making a translation for certain volumes of Gemara for translation of Tosos. So you'll just have to follow along and listen to me like we always do. So again, Shafi and Hayu Ba'oso Hanes, those who want to take a look inside. Pirush Rishbam, She'ikar Hanes Haya Al Yadan. The Rishbam says that why are women obligated in the mitzvah of reading Megillah? Because they were actually the ones, they didn't just happen to be standing there, but they were the ones who actually were the heroes in the story. They brought about the miracles of the holidays. But Purim Ayadei Esther, Purim Esther, it's called Megillah Esther after all, right? Esther brought about the miracle of Purim. Chanukah Ayadei Yehudis, Chanukah was through Yehudis. The Pesach, nigalu, and for Pesach, it was because of the schus, the merit of the righteous women of that generation, that we were redeemed. I believe that's a reference, perhaps, to the Medrash where women got their husbands to still have children despite the edicts of Paro. I think that's what's in reference to, but I guess I'd have to look it up on Sota Yud Aleph and Beis and see if I'm correct about that assumption. If anyone wants to fact check me on it, Henry, do you have something?
No.
Oh, you're turning, and I thought that was like you're like making a point.
No.
Okay.
Right.
So that's the Rishbam. The Rishbam, I'm going to use I'm going to be anachronistic over here. Chas v'shalom, I never actually accuse the Rishbam of such, but the Rishbam is adopting the feminist approach here. He's like, the women were on the forefront, right? They were having the sushi, they were rising up, they were doing whatever women are doing at the Chabura in 2 hours. But then there is the more conservative approach, the anti-feminist approach, which is the Ukasha, which is the main approach of Tosos. Ukasha delashon she'av hein mash mashen tefeilos upeirusha hayalomar shehein. What's the language? Look at the language of the Gemara. It says she'av hein hayibosanes. Afin, even they were also included. It makes it sound like women being included in the miracle was an afterthought. Certainly they weren't spearheading, they weren't on the vanguard, they weren't the movers and shakers making the miracle happen. It happens to be that they too were saved, they too were part of the redemption, they too were part of the salvation. Lakach nir li, What's it mean that women were included in Nes? Not that they brought about the miracle of Purim, of Chanukah, of Pesach, but rather that they too were rescued when God brought about our salvation. Likewise, women were also meshubad. Women also were indentured or in servitude in Egypt. Terrible things were done to them, and they were redeemed from there. Likewise, in Chanukah, women also had gezerus against them. It's interesting, that means we assume that the women were doing Talmud Torah back then, because the big gezerah was against studying Torah. I guess Shabbos also, bris not so much, but so these are two radically different approaches to understanding the role of women in the stories here. Rishbam says that the Iker miracle was through them, And the second opinion in Tosos is that no, they just happen to have also been rescued. So I have a theory that based on which approach you adopt here in Tosfos will tell you how much you think women are chayiv in the midst of Megillah reading. And that, God willing, we'll explore Monday night. I'll share with you my theory about that. But let's just
what do they say about the avadati, that Esther says?
Yeah, so I mean, the understanding Chazal is that once she had relations with Achashverosh, she was usher labal, usher laboel. She wasn't allowed to remain with Mordechai anymore. So there's a Tosos. Well, God willing, get up to it here. I think it should be. Yeah, it is Megillah. It also comes up in the beginning of Ksubos and maybe one other place I'm not thinking of, which understands it that way. But let's just finish up this Tosos first, and then we'll jump into the Gemara. Gabe Matzah.
If I might interrupt, this might be just a matter of grammar, as in, don't think the women weren't included in the miracle; they were also included in the miracle. It's not that they were just included. It's a minimal thing, but you shouldn't think that they weren't included, and that would explain the phraseology.
Well, right, you are concurring with the second suggestion in Tosos. Tosos makes that point as well. Now let's afhein ha'yubosa nes. It sounds like they're an afterthought, whereas Rashbam suggests that no, they were actually the movers and shakers. They were the ones who catalyzed and brought about the redemption. So, Chazal are very careful with their words. So there's what to be medayik from there. Anyway, I just want to finish the Tosos and then we'll get into the Gemara. This is really from last time. Gabe matzah yesh maksha lama liha kesha t'chol sheyeshno b'baltochel chametz yeshno b'kum ochel matzah teipikle mitam shein hayu b'osa nes. So how do we know that women are chayiv to eat matzah on Pesach? Isn't matzah by definition? It's a mitzvah seishas man grama. The mitzvah to eat matzah is time-bound by virtue of being a mitzvah only on Pesach. So how do we know? Well, we have a hekesh the same way women are chayiv in the lo saseh of Bayer Matzeh, that and also that they shouldn't eat chametz. So too, they're also chayiv in the positive aspects of Pesach as well. And we see a similar thing for Shabbos also. Question is, why do I lamali hakesha? Why do I need all this fancy schmancy hermeneutics to figure this out? Why can't I apply the principle we just learned? The same way we know women are obligated in a mitzvah of Megillah because they too were involved in the miracle, whatever involved means. So too for Pesach. Why do I need any fancy hermeneutics? They too were redeemed from Egypt. So there are two answers that are given. One, had I not had the hekesh, Avin Hayibos Nes is a rabbinical concept. It doesn't work on a doraisa level. The rabbi, so Megillah is midrabanan, pipashtus. So the rabbis who instituted Megillah for men, they could also institute it and enact it for women as well, due to the rationale of Avin Hayibos Nes, that they too were involved in the miracle. But eating matzah, which is a deoraisa, biblical level mitzvah, the Afin Hayibos Nes at best can only make women chayiv on a derabanan level, which is why we need the hekesh. We need that hermeneutical teaching to tell us the same way they are forbidden from having chametz, so too they are obligating the positive mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach. That's answer number one. Answer number two, Rabbeinu Yosef Ish Yerushalayim. Wow, what a great name. Tiris the saga daitach l'miftrim exir shava de tesvav de tesav de chagas sukos kide precious perik elu uvrin. So another havamina would be that there is a gezerah shava of tesvav. We learn about gezerah shavas. You have the same wording in one place, same wording in the other. It teaches us that they share similar halachos. So there is a gezerah shava that connects the laws of Sukkot to Pesach. What would have I thought if all I had was the svar of Afin Hayibos Nes, that the reason women are obligated to eat matzah is because they were included in the miracle? Well, on Sukkot, women are not obligated to eat in the sukkah. That's one of the heterim for why men don't need to sleep in the sukkah, because if a man is married, then he can use his wife as a get out of sukkah free ticket from sleeping in there. And I'm not even joking. That's one of the rationales given. And then this question, well, what if she's a nida at the time? Would it still apply? What's the nature of ona? Did we do this pre-sukkah? I feel like I must have taught this at some point. You know what? I taught it in Plainview when I was there. So I still got stuff in my arsenal, guys. I still got stuff. So what's the havamina? The same way women aren't obligated in the positive mitzvah of eating and sleeping in a sukkah on sukkahs, so too they wouldn't be obligated in mitzvah of mikra megillah. Kamash malan. That's why. Not mikra megillah, of eating matzah on Pesach. Kamash malan. That's why we needed a hekesh to tell us, even though really they shouldn't be obligated. We would have learned that from sukkahs. Nonetheless, we have a hekesh that the same way they're obligated in the negative mitzvos, the negative commandments of Pesach, so to the positive of eating matzah as well. And that brings us to the end of Tosfos. I feel like we got to do a Tosfos every now and then, even though we're trying to cover ground in Bekias. Also, we don't have as much material in the Gemara to cover tonight, so I thought we had the luxury of doing it. Okay. Rabosai, let's look back in the Gemara now. And those of you who have your art scrolls, they will now be of help once more. So we are up to, I think it still might be in the first section for art scroll, possibly, but I would venture to guess toward the end. Bamar Yeshua ben Levi, Purim Shechal Yos B'Shabbos, Shoalin ben Dorshin ben Yono Shel Yom. So as we will learn soon, there is a halacha that when Purim falls out on Shabbos, we do not read Megillah on Shabbos. Why not? Because we're afraid that someone's going to want to practice learning the Megillah. He's going to carry it over to someone to teach him how to do it, and he's going to violate carrying through a Rishus Harabim. I'm sorry, I just need to open up my. Hopefully, the rap music is no longer playing. Just give me a moment. We're all set. Okay, sorry about that. Now. So now I can get some cold air in here now because I'm sweating too much. So here we go. When Purim falls out on Shabbos, we don't read Megillah. Nonetheless, there's a halacha that we should still teach about the halachos of Purim on Shabbos, even if we can't learn from the Megillah. That way, there's still a certain Rashi mentions this. Rashi says, why do we do this? I thought I underlined it. Sholem v'dorshin. No, where is it? Where was the Rashi? Okay. Well, actually, I thought I saw the Rashi somewhere. They gave that rationale. Okay. Anyway, I don't see the Rashi on there for some reason. So my area, here's the question. My area of Purim, I feel Yantif Nami. Why does Rashi and Levi need to teach us that we should teach about Purim on Purim Day? I would think this is obvious. In fact, not only do you need to teach on the day of the Yantif, but you're even supposed to teach 30 days prior to the Yantif. The Tanya, as it's taught in the Brisa, Moshe tikin lehem liyisrael sheyu sholem v'dorsh v'noshel yom, hilchos pesach b'pesach, hilchos atzeres b'atzeres, hilchos chag v'chag. So Moshe Rabbeinu taught us already that one is already supposed to be teaching about these halachos on Pesach, Shavuos on Shavuos, and Sukkos on Sukkos. In fact, we have the principle of Shlosh Yom Kodem Echad, 30 days prior to Pesach, and arguably other holidays as well. One is already supposed to be learning those halachos. So what's the chiddush? What's Rashi ben Levi teaching me that I would not have known otherwise? Pashut. If I'm not reading Megillah, at very least, I shouldn't neglect my responsibility to be learning about the holiday on the very day of it. In fact, there's actually something. Maybe we can make it happen in Stanford this year. There's something I remember going up called Yeshivas Mordechai at Tzaddik. Anyone ever hear of that? So my dad, the first time I found out when I was a kid, my dad was joking to me. We're walking past the Agudas Yisrael in our neighborhood. He's like, "Oh, look, a new yeshiva opened up there." I said, "Oh, it's kind of funny that they opened up on Purim Day. It's called Yeshivas Mordechai at Tzaddik, which just means in the morning they have food put out, and then people learn Torah on Purim morning in shul, because you don't need to spend the whole day in frivolity and revelry, so you can spend a little time learning Torah." So it's this idea that you're supposed to be spending time learning Torah. So what would have my Havamina have been? Why would have I thought that on Shabbos I should not be teaching about Purim? Purim itzrachale ma'adutema nigzar mishum terabba kamash malan. No. What would have I thought? So here's the Rashi. Mishum terabba. The Gazer Lekaman on Amid Beis, we'll get there next week. Kriyas Megillah Sheming Avirena Arba Amos Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi said we don't lay Megillah on Shabbos because then you might come to carry it through Rosh Hashanah. Those who are in our daily Mishnah crowd, that was the first Mishnah on Shabbos. We talked about the Isser of Hotzah, of carrying in a public domain. So what would have I thought? Afkan Gazu Drasha Atu Kriya. I would have thought that maybe the Gezerah would even be expansive enough that I shouldn't even be learning about Megillah on Shabbos. Atu, I might come to then read and carry the Megillah on Shabbos. Kamash Malan, what's Rav Shimon Levi come to tell us? No, it's only laning Megillah you don't do on Shabbos, but learning about Megillah on Shabbos is not only permissible, but it is commendable and it's imperative to do so. Adkan, that halacha of Rav Shimon Levi. Next piece. Rav Shimon Levi, one is supposed to read the Megillah at night, and I'm going to purposely not translate this because the Gemara doesn't quite know yet itself, and to do something with it during the daytime. Shenemar, Elokai ekra yomam v'lo saneh. My God, I call out to him at day and I receive no answer. And at night, and there's no silence, respite for me. So initially, how did people understand this teaching for Shimon Levi? That one is supposed to read the Megillah, lane it for everyone at night, and then have Yeshivas Mordechai and Tzaddik and teach the Mishnayos of Megillah during the daytime. What was the error in translation that they made? So Rashi points out, B'nei HaYeshiva sheshamu shmo zo b'lashon hakodesh. So the word ulishanosa can mean one of two things. If you're reading it in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew, it means to study. So it sounds like you're supposed to be studying Mishnah during the day. However, Amar Lahu Rabbi Yirmiyah, L'didina farshli minei Rabbi Chia bar Abba. I heard an alternative understanding of what Rav Shimon Levi meant to convey. You're going to Amrichi Avor Parasha Dava Esnia. I will go over this parsha and I will repeat it. The Aramaic understanding. So what was Rav Shimon Levi saying? He wasn't saying lane during the night and learn Mishnah during the day. Honestly, I think I would have liked that a lot better. But rather, he says you should lane at night and lane during the day as well. By the way, I haven't seen anyone who says this. And I looked at my Masifta. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anyone who says, but this is my theory. So what's this example? Like people say, I will go over this parsha and then I will repeat it. It sounds a lot like Shnai Mikra. No? I'll read the parsha once and I'll read it again, as people say. Otherwise, what is this phrase that's referring to? Maybe there's another explanation, but I thought it was a reference to how people describe when they lane Shnai Mikra, that literally you're supposed to read the parsha once and then repeat it. But I didn't see anyone who explains it that way. So if anyone else has any guesses. Anyway, this is supported Itmar Nami. He wasn't the only one who said this, but it was corroborated by another scholar. Amar Rabbi Chelbo, Amar Ula Bira, Chayiv Adam Likros Megillah B'Layla Shnos B'Yom. One is obligated to read the Megillah at night and then during the day once more. He uses another proof text. Shnamar Lamani Zemercha Chavod V'Lo Yidom Hashem Elokai Lo Modeka. Right? In Mizmor Shir. So what Lamani Zemercha Chavod refers to the daytime, and V'Lo Yidom, and I will not be silent, refers to the nighttime. And that is an allusion to the laning of daytime and nighttime in the pasuk. Now, it's not such a clear derivation. You kind of have to fetch it in, but also remember that the basis of laning Megillah is midrabanan. This could just be an asmachta, where the rabbis are just giving us a pasuk to help us remember the basis of the mitzvah of Megillah. Okay? You know, tonight's a night for Tosos. Take a look at the Tosos all the way on the bottom of the page. Right, we're not even at 7:30 yet. We already are halfway through the Gemara, so we could afford another Tosos. It's a short one. Bottom of the page. Omer Ri. Even though you lane during the night, here's what I would have thought. It's a weird thing. Why do we lane during the nighttime and then lane again during the daytime? After all, did I not? This is my frustration every year. Well, didn't I already fulfill the mitzvah at nighttime? Why the next morning do I have to be stuck in shul starving and waiting for the guy to finish getting through Megillah already? He wants to do all the funny voices, just get through it, and people are making noise during Haman. I could do without that daytime reading already. Usually people behave, by the way, a lot more during the daytime reading, thank God. Less kids at shul and less adults that act like kids at shul. I have very strong feelings against people who make like a lot of noise during Megillah. I think like we should just bang once during Haman, just be Yotze, whatever minhag, and then we should just go through it, and that's it.
By the way, that's my minion in Chicago has exactly that minhag.
Henry, bring something back to us. I mean, I used COVID as an excuse last year to enact that rule at my minion also. I just made a rule at my minion, like no noise. That's one bang. That's all I'm allotting you. And you can't say the last Haman also, because most people don't know when the last Haman is. So they're all just gonna do 3 Hamans early. But also it's like from not just my annoyance. I'm sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox over here. But also the issue is that you're much more likely not to be Yotzei the mitzvah. You're replacing the Iker with the Tafel. Right? Remember we talked about Bittul Torah, about priorities. So you have people, and I think the Mishnah Berurah actually has a formulation like this. The people take the banging of Haman and they turn it into the Iker mitzvah at the expense of, I feel like, the actual mitzvah of hearing all the words of the Megillah. So it's a Pella. Okay, I'll leave you guys with that. So the reason we repeat it at the daytime is because the primary reading of the Megillah is during the day. And how do we know this? Ukranami mashma came from the pasuk cited in the Gemara. Dichsiv v'layla v'lo dumyali klomar avagav shekori b'yom chayv likros b'layla v'ikar havi b'yamama kimush iskura kasav tchila. Since the verse refers to daytime first before nighttime, we see that the daytime is more significant, that's the primary reading. Furthermore, if you don't like that diuk from the pasuk, the gam ikra suda biyamamahu kita amar lekaman. So we know that the sudas mitzvah Purim has to take place during the day. I mean, you're welcome to have a nice dinner on Purim night, but you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. One of the mitzvahs of the day is having a sudas Purim, and if you don't have that sudas Purim, you've missed one of the mitzvahs of the day. Having a night will not count. Lo yotzi dechavaso. V'chinami mashim nichsiv niskar v'nasim. Remember that Gemara we learned very recent. It's all recent. We only started the Masechta a few weeks ago about niskarim v'nasim v'iskish zechir la'asiyah. The fact that we talk about niskarim, remembering v'nasim and doing. Niskarim, remembering, refers to the Megillah, which we recall the story of Purim. V'nasim refers to the active mitzvahs of the day, like having the meal, the Sudas Purim. And because we have a Hekesh, because these two mitzvahs are juxtaposed in the Pasuk, that teaches us that they share similar parameters. Ma ikar asi b'yamama, just as the meal has to take place during the day, that's when we fulfill the mitzvah. Av schira came, so to the schira, which is the Megillah. The primary reading is during the day. Now, Lamai Nafkamina. So anyone who is Anyone who was at shul tonight between Mincha and Marv, you'll forgive me. I taught this one thing between Mincha and Marv. Judd or anyone else, or Erwin, whoever else was with us, my apologies. Chazor is the Iker. So the question is, what's the nafkamina? There's a Turei Even that suggests that, remember how we had a machlokis about where the mitzvah Megillah comes from? It's certainly not Doraisa level. It's certainly not on a biblical level. However, it's possible that it's not just an ordinary mitzvah midorabanan. It's not just an ordinary rabbinical level mitzvah. What was that, Henry?
Divrei Sofrim.
Divrei Kabbalah, I think is the precise wording that
in between. Yeah.
It's Divrei Kabbalah. Divrei Kabbalah because it has a basis in the psukim in Megillah Esther. So it's not just a random takana that the Rabbanan came up with, but it's actually mandated in Tanakh itself, not in the Tuf of Tanakh, not in the Torah, but in Nach. So it has significant standing. The Turei Even suggests, I believe it's a Turei Even who suggests this, that the daytime reading was the one that was mandated in Divrei Kabbalah, and the nighttime reading was just in standard ordinary midrabanan. Lamai nafkamina. Well, the classic nafkamina, classic practical difference is suffix derabanan lahakel. That when you have a doubt, let's say I had too much to drink already. I drank way too soon. I'm already drunk, and I don't even know if I was inebriated. I don't even know if I fulfilled the mitzvah Megillah or not. I don't remember if I listened to Megillah the day before. I blacked out completely. Or a few hours ago, and somehow I recovered fast enough also. So whatever, okay. So the question is, if I don't know if I fulfilled the mitzvah Megillah, do I have to go back and hear it again? So the nighttime reading, he suggests, you would not have to repeat because it's only standard midrabanan, suffix derabanan lahakel. But the daytime reading, he says, possibly you would have to repeat it. You would have to hear it again. Why? Because Divrei Kabbalah, and to a certain degree, Divrei Kabbalah shares similarities to a doraisa in terms of its severity. So all that based on a discussion from this Tosos that says that the daytime reading is the primary reading because that's the one mandated by the Megillah. And the Rabbanan later said, you know what, let's do it during the nighttime for good measure. Adkan this Tosos. Okay, let me pause. Any clarification questions at this point that I can address? All right, I'm here. We got two Tososim in tonight. It's really nice. Let's get back to the Gemara now. See, that's when it's, okay, we are done with our friend Reishu ben Levi for now. And now you'll see we're on the bottom of the page, 4 lines up at the 2 dots, which means we are quoting our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, you'll recall it said, or if you don't recall, it quotes it for us, El Shakvar Magdimin Le Yom HaKnisa. So let's just do a little bit of quick chazara. Most places by default, villages and big cities, lane on the 14th day of Adar, except for walled cities from the times of Yeshua, or arguably Achashverosh, we ignore that, they will lane on the 15th day. But villages, small little villages, they have a special quirk that if the 14th day does not fall out on Monday or Thursday, then they can actually go to the big city and hear Megillah lane for them on Yud Aleph, the 11th, on the 12th, or the 13th, whichever day the previous Yom HaKnisa falls out on. So what's Yom HaKnisa? Yom HaKnisa is Monday or Thursday. Monday or Thursday is significant for one of 2 reasons. One is because that is when Kriyas HaTorah takes place. They want to go to the big city to hear the Torah read. Also, it's the day that Beis Din sits down to adjudicate cases. The villagers would come into the city to have their cases heard before Beis Din. So that's what takes place on Monday and Thursday. So as long they can basically push up their Megillah reading to Monday or Thursday, and someone in the city will lane for them. Okay, it's like, think about it. Think about small out-of-town communities. They always, I remember there's one small town, out-of-town community on Long Island I went to for Shabbos. So what do? They hire a yeshiva bacher to come for Shabbos to lane for them because in such a small community, they don't have enough people, a critical mass. If you have a critical mass, there's going to be like a Henry, a Judd, or somebody that can lane somewhere. If you have enough people, chances are you're going to have someone that can lane. When you're so small, you don't. So the villagers go to the city to hear laning. Okay, so I just want to make sure. Do we understand the nature of the villagers, how they get to hear laning on a different date than the 14th and why? I just want to make sure that's clear going in. I'm happy to speak more to that because it's very critical for understanding this Gemara. We understand the dynamic?
I have a question.
Yeah.
They're going to the big city, but the big city is going to be laning on the 14th. So they're going to be going to hear it on the 14th anyway, if it's going to be laned in the big city.
Very good. If it falls out on a Monday or Thursday, you're saying?
Yeah.
Very good. And the Gemara is going to make note of that. So that's you had a bit of nevuah over there. Very good. Okay, let's go into the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Chanina. So here's the question. Is the fact that the villagers get to hear Megillah laned a few days before the big city, is that for the benefit of the villagers or for the benefit of the city? How so? Amar Rabbi Chanina, Chachamim hakilu al kfarim liyos magdimim liyom haknisa, that the Chachamim were more lenient with the villagers, that they could hear on a Monday or Thursday before the 14th. Why? Kidei sheyisafku mayim nachin shebekrachin, so that they be available on the 14th to provide food for the sudas of the people in the big city. So if they get to hear Megillah a day or two early, then they're available on Purim to provide for the needs of the big city. So this is like real in-towner mentality over here. You know, like this is like real, like, you know, it's like the out-of-town people exist to help us in-towners. And I'm not gonna, I already got on my soapbox once tonight, so I'm gonna pass on this one, even though it's tempting. Lememra de dekanta de krachen habi. So what do we see? That the reason the Rabbanim were makel with the villagers to let them hear laning earlier is in order to benefit it's not for their benefit really, but actually sort of benefit of the big cities so that they could go in to the big cities on Purim and provide for them. But this doesn't fit with our Mishnah. If the 14th falls out on Monday, Vayaros Gedos Korbo Bayom. Kfarim Vayaros Gedos Korbo Bayom. The villages and the big cities together will lane on the 14th. Vim Isa, and if our theory is correct, that the point of the villagers hearing laning earlier on a Monday or Thursday, right? Let's say it falls out on Wednesday, so then you hear it on the Monday before, is so that they're available to serve the big city. Then likadmu yom haknisa, then they should actually be hearing it on the previous yom haknisa. So let's say, let's say it falls out on Monday. What's going to happen? Both the villagers and the big city hear laning on that day. But wait a minute. Shouldn't they really be hearing it on the Thursday? The villagers should hear it on the Thursday prior so that they're available on the 14th on Monday, the following Monday, to provide for the big city. If the whole point is takana is for the benefit of the big cities, if it falls out on Monday, the villagers are going to be occupied and won't be able to service the big cities. So it doesn't seem that the takana is for the welfare of the big city. Because if not, why don't they just listen to it on the Thursday beforehand so that they're available on that Monday, the 14th, to help the cities? So the answer is, yeah, really, that's what we would want, but we have a technical issue. If you go back, if the 14th is on Monday, then that means the Thursday prior is the 10th of Adar. And we spent a lot of time explaining that the range of dates to hear Megillah only goes as far back as the 11th. 10th is not on the table, and therefore that's not possible. Okay, it's a technical answer. But Tashima, we're still not satisfied. We're still going to attack this position that the out-of-towners live to service the in-towners. Tashima, Chalios Bechamishi, let's say the 14th falls out on Thursday. Kfar Vayaros Gedos Karbo Bayom. both the villagers and the big cities will read on the 14th, on that Thursday that it falls out. Misa, same question. But if the point of the out-of-towners is to service the in-towners, the Kaliyama Kanisa, then let them go back a few days. Let the villagers hear laning on Monday. And this time you can't say, oh, it's the 10th. No, if you go back from Thursday to Monday, then it's actually the 11th. Yet for some reason, we don't let the villagers do that to make them available to service the big cities. So the answer is, we don't push back from one Yom Kanisa to the previous Yom HaKnisa. We don't push back from Thursday to Monday. We don't push back from Mondays to Thursdays.
Isn't that a problem?
Isn't that a problem? Yeah.
The big city, let's say, is going to be laning the Megillah on Monday. The out-of-towners that will be coming in, they're going to be bringing supplies. They're not going to be cooking and serving. They're just bringing in their supplies as they would on Monday or Thursday anyway, which are the market days. So while they're tied up selling stuff to the city people are going to be in the marketplace buying from them. So
Right.
Nobody is hearing laning while the market is in operation.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I guess the way I conceptualized it, and I could be wrong, is that they didn't just bring in raw materials, but they were kind of like the street vendors in New York City, where they're like, you buy a hot dog from them and you go on your way. Not exactly like that, but that's how I conceptualized it. But you're right. If they come in with their raw materials and then you're busy buying it from them and cooking it, you're not really gonna have time to do Purim either. Interesting.
You'll do your cooking and then you'll have your laning afterwards. You have your laning and then you do your cooking.
All right, I hear your point. Sadie. Good point. But let's just finish our train of thought here. Tashima, we have one final question, and this will be the nail in the coffin. Amar Yehuda, Amasai, when do we have this din that villagers can hear laning earlier? But where they are accustomed to visiting their city on Mondays and Thursdays on a regular basis. But where they're not accustomed, where they don't go visit the large cities anyway on Monday and Thursday, then at that point, why are we giving you the special dispensation to hear it earlier? If you're not going in anyway on Mondays and Thursdays, why should we give you a dispensation to hear it on Monday and Thursdays? Just go in on the proper day at that point. And based on this, we're going to ask the question, if we think that this gezerah is not for the benefit of the villagers, but for the benefit of the townspeople in the city, what? Because the people in their villages happen to not come in every Monday and Thursday, they come in on other days, therefore they shouldn't be able to hear it earlier. It shouldn't make a difference whether the villagers normally come in on Monday or Thursdays or not. The point is, we want them to be fully available and fully ready to service every whim of the people living in town in the cities. So why should it matter to us whether they usually come in on Thursday? The point is, we need them available. Let them hear it earlier so they can serve us. So therefore we conclude, which is the conclusion I was hoping for, Lo tema kidei sheyitzavku mayim. Yeah, we may have misunderstood. It's not that the Rabbanim were lenient with the villagers to hear laying earlier, kidei, in order so that they should be available to serve food and drinks to the city dwellers. Ella ema, rather read it as mipnei shemisapkim mayim umazim lachein shevkrachim, because they are always busy bringing food and drinks to the people in the big cities. Therefore, we will be more lenient with them. What does that mean? Look at Rashi. Rashi understands schar hu lahem b'shvil shemisapkin. The Chachamim were throwing a bone to the villagers. Since you guys generally work very hard and you come in on Mondays and Thursdays to help service the city, we're not going to force you to come in more time. Well, I guess they're coming in twice Monday and Thursdays. It's kind of 3 times actually. unless Mondays or Thursdays that they're coming in. But basically, we're not going to make you come into the city an additional time. But if you don't normally come into the city additional time, there's no reason for us to throw you that bone. That makes a lot more sense. Now we understand why if Yud Dalet, the 14 falls out on Monday, it falls out on Thursday, we don't allow them to come in earlier. There's no point. The whole point is to minimize how much tircha, how much we impose on the villagers to come into the city. If Yud Dalet falls out on Monday and Thursday, that's perfect. They can hear Kriyas Torah, they can hear Megillah reading, they can get everything done in one shot on one day. They get all their errands done. I guess Basin is probably not operational then, I would imagine, but they got other errands done. So Rashi understands that this is the Rabbanan throwing them a bone. The other understanding, alternatively, I think it's the Rashba, he suggested that it wasn't really us rewarding them for their commitment to their dedication to the city, but it's to make sure that they themselves aren't busy the entire day trying to find the minyan. Because if they're spending their entire Purim trying to, like imagine, in our city we have, what is it, over 500 member families in our shul, and there's more Jews, of course, on top of that. And sometimes we struggle just to get a minyan at a good shalom. Kal v'chomer, a small village, struggles to get a minyan because they have much less men. So the Rabbanan didn't want the villagers spending their entire day, going from house to house, sending WhatsApps out, trying to gather a minyan, so that way they could hear laning earlier in the city in order so that they could enjoy Purim properly. So again, not for the benefit of the in-towners, but the out-of-towners, they matter just as much. And the Rabbanan even are more lenient and kinder to the out-of-towners than to the in-towners. So that's for you, Henry, who moved out to Chicago, right? We love you out-of-towners also. Okay, very good. There was one, actually, I'll conclude with one interesting halakhic question that came up. So we're done with the Gemara. I'm bringing out those who aren't familiar, who are joining us from Megillah. I have my good friend over here, Rabbi Zilberstein, who has a series of books called Chashukei Chemed on the Masechtos and Shas. So you might be familiar with his Vaharivna, which is he asks halachic questions that very loosely pertain to the Parsha, and in his same style, he asks halachic questions that sometimes are more connected, sometimes less connected to the Gemara. So here's our question. Remember we said one has to hear Megillah laned at nighttime and during the day? So here's my question. Let's say somebody is incarcerated, they are in jail, and the king will let them out, or the governor, whoever it is, will let him out for either the nighttime reading of Megillah or the daytime reading of Megillah. Should he, on the one hand, the daytime reading, we said, is the Iker reading. I would think, let him wait for the daytime so he can fulfill the higher obligation of the daytime reading. But on the other hand, Mitzad Sheni, he says, maybe what's Kodemes Yoser? Since nighttime comes first, I should jump on the first mitzvah available to me. So the question is, which one wins it out? Now, what does this question sound familiar? Why does this question sound familiar? What's it harken back to? A tshuva of the Radvaz. Anyone ever hear this?
Do the mitzvah as soon as you can.
What was that, Phyllis?
Do the mitzvah as soon as you can.
Do mitzvah as soon as you can. So, okay, here's a tshuva of the Radvaz. The Radvaz was asked a similar question. If somebody could get out of jail one day a year, should he wait? What day should he get out on? So one suggestion was he should wait till Yom Kippur to get out of jail so he could daven in shul on Yom Kippur with a minyan. But he said, no, you take your first opportunity, and like Phyllis, you said, you jump on the first opportunity that comes to you. So it would seem the Radvaz in this situation as well would also say that you take the nighttime reading because the nighttime reading is your first opportunity. So you jump on the first opportunity that is given to you. Whereas the Chacham Svi in his Chuvos, he vehemently disagrees with this application. And so what he does is he quotes a Gemara in Menachos. The Gemara asks the following question. If you have a tzibor, they only have enough to either bring a carbon tamid, the daily tamid offering, or to bring a carbon musaf. Which one should they bring first? The cases where they can do the carbon musaf now or do the carbon tamid the next day. So the question is, tadir adif, do we opt for the carbon tamid, which is we do more consistently? Do we go with what's more consistent? Or mikudash adif, or we go with the carbon musaf, which is holier than the carbon tamid? The Chacham says it's very clear that between both considerations of either what's more consistent or what is more holy, they didn't take into the equation what can you do immediately, which would be the carbon musaf. So why don't they take that into the equation? He says, "Delo amrinan ein mavirin ala mitzos el b'shteihen shavos." When do we apply Phyllis's principle of ein mavirin ala mitzos? That when a mitzvah comes to your hand, you should al tachmid sana, you jump on it right away. That's when you have two mitzvos on equal footing. But if you have two mitzvahs that are qualitatively different and one is superior, even if that's not the first mitzvah that comes to your hand, it's better to wait for the superior mitzvah to the, I don't want to say inferior, but not as highly coveted mitzvah. Tie that back into the mitzvah of Megillah. The daytime reading, black on white, is superior to the nighttime reading. Maybe even something different Kabbalah. That's the Iker reading. So the Chacham Tzvi, unlike the Radvaz, who would say you jump on the opportunity for the nighttime reading, similar to not waiting for Yom Kippur, you get out of jail right away. He would say you jump on the nighttime reading. The Chacham Tzvi says, no, you don't say Ein Mavir Al Mitzvos. If the nighttime reading and daytime reading were on equal footing, they had equal status, then yeah, of course, jump on the nighttime reading right away. But since the daytime reading is the Iker, you actually would be chayav to wait for the later, for the daytime reading and take that opportunity, because we don't say Ein Mavir Al Mitzvos unless both of the mitzvos are on equal footing. So I thought that was an interesting, fun halakhic question that emerged from our discussion this evening. And well, that's Chashukei Chaim could get a lot more wonkier than that. That's actually a pretty tame tshuva from him. We've done some really thrilling and interesting and odd ones in our time, and trust me, we'll have some of them too in future weeks, God willing. All right, shkoyach everyone. This brings us to the end of our shiur for tonight. I'm wishing you all a wonderful, restful Shabbos. Hope to see you at shul if you're able to make it. The shiur is officially over, but as always, I'll stay on for a moment in case anyone has any questions that I have not yet addressed.
Does your Zadie want to answer about his question about?
Oh, please, Henry. Yeah.
Hang on a second.
So Zadie, last week you asked about a peninsula in a walled city. So Henry looked into the question.
Yes, and I had thought about Tiberia, and it turns out that's a good example. The city of Tiberia in Eretz Yisrael. It's actually, they read it on both days because of the doubt. And the question is, what's the thing? What's the purpose? So is the literally mukefet choma, that it has to be totally surrounded by literally a wall, in which case the city on the coast would not qualify, or is it because the walled cities have protection from invaders and so on, in which case the fact that one side is along the water would still have the protection. So because of that, Tiberia is mentioned, and I think on Daf Hey, we'll get to it in a few weeks, but I think the answer is that it's not clear either way. So a city like Tiberia has to read on both days.
Very good. Shkoyach Henry. And as you said, God willing, we'll get there very soon.
Rabbi,
yes,
question.
Phyllis.
What about the other mitzvot associated with Purim, specifically in response to the one who's in jail? About I mean, I know the Simchat Purim has to be during the day, but what about Matanot Levyonim what you call Matanot
Shalach Manos and Matanos Levyonim
Yeah.
Right. So Matazav, Yonah, Mishloach Manos, and Suda are all considered the active mitzvos. And so those are unequivocally during the daytime. The only question was Megillah, and Megillah we kind of wind up with at nighttime and daytime. But one is supposed to give their matanos levyonim, their gifts to their money to the poor, and their mishloach manos during the daytime. You give it during the night, unless there's some interesting minority sheet that I'm not remembering, you would not be yotzei the mitzvah.
Is there a reason why that is so? Why the other three have to be done during the day?
It's learned out. I think it's learned out from a drasha in the pasuk. That's my recollection. Offhand. That's always a good answer. It's a drasha. It's Xeris Akasa. I mean, you can't say Xeris Akasa really, because it's not Deraisa, but you know what I mean. Okay. Very good, folks. But thank you for helping us clarify that. That's important. Anyone else? All right. Have a wonderful night, everyone. And God willing, see you on Shabbos. And God willing, looking forward to continuing next week. Bezos Hashem.
I know about this Shabbos.
All right.
Good job.
We'll see you on Zoom, man.
Have a
Take
good
care.
Shabbos. No,
Shabbos.
Good
not on
Shabbos.
Shabbos.